So, to all my gamers out there, I think you'll be very much intrigued by Chuck's early on experience with companies like Madden and Mattel. And while we're not here to talk about games, we will talk about how Chuck's journey from a cattle farmer to an AI expert really shaped what he learned in the gaming and human engagement space, and how he took this and was motivated by it, but also now wanted to figure out how to facilitate one, a healthier population, and see what could be done around the betterment of people's lives. Health will forever be wealth. But whenever you have a groundbreaking technology such as PRSONAS, it can be met with some resistance. For example, he even told me that when stethoscopes were first debuted, they were even met with some resistance, and there was some interesting commentary around that. Well, I don't know about you, but I have used those for as long as I could remember. Whenever I go to the doctor's office, hospitals, you name it. So with anything that is met with resistance, it doesn't always mean that it's just out for the count, but sometimes you just have to make sense of it. So without further ado, enjoy episode 176, Empowerment over Replacement.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Down to Business podcast here with Tamar Turner. I'm sitting down with Chuck today, man. I'm excited for him I feel like he has quite the story, quite the background, I was even kind of going through some of his bio and everything, and he was working for some jobs when I wasn't even born yet. So, and he was working for some jobs the year I was born in 96. So he's definitely seen some things, been through some things, but ultimately has been able to see it happen among us, and one that's really taken place at a very rapid rate, even leaving some people behind. Some people are feeling like they're behind the curve. Some people may be right where they are, but I will let him break it all down for you. But first and foremost, Chuck, how you doing today? How's everything on your end?
I'm doing awesome tomorrow. I appreciate you letting people know how old I am, but we're good.
It just depends how good at math they are. We can skip right over.
Yeah, you'll find that's actually the root of a lot of what's got me to where I'm at. So I am pretty motivated, and I do appreciate you having me on. And I think my gray hairs will come to bear on why I think we've got a unique approach to how we tackle life right now.
Okay, I'm liking that already. I'm liking that already. So before we get into all things that you're here to talk to us about, I know that we're going to have some people from your side, my side, and then we'll have some newcomers along the way. So to bring everybody up to speed, can you one just tell us a little bit about yourself, and then can you two just tell us what brings you on the Down to Business podcast today?
Sure. Chuck, I'm a CEO president of a human AI company, which I always say is a little ambiguous, but AI is obviously a flash in the headlines these days, and everybody's talking about Chat GPT and generative AI and what it really means. Um, um, Definitely different from my roots. I'm a cattle farmer growing up to be AI expert. So I like to jokingly tell people about that, but there's some bearing on how we engage, how humans engage in stuff, how we've learned to engage in human communication that's really comes to bear. So I come from the days of pre-cell phone and pre-video games, all the way through being the video game director for Madden and now the human AI expert. So I've kind of run that whole gamut, and that's what brings me on today. I'm really motivated by some, let's call it 5 years of health challenges, and how I can take what I've learned from the gaming space and human engagement world and kind of use it for the betterment of people's lives, and how we can use it to bring us a healthier population.
So the very first thing that you said, human AI, I just really want to start there. One, because I feel like where people may hear that term, people may hear that phrase, they may not know exactly what it is. Yes, we know AI stands for artificial intelligence, but when
Yep.
you put a human in front of it, what exactly does that mean? What are we talking about here to clear up any confusion or misconception?
Well, I'm glad you asked, because this is where it gets fun. Because I'm a gamer by heart, gamer by trade. I was one of those first gamers that Mattel hooked when they had three little red blips on the screen, and I was playing this little Mattel football game, and they convinced me that three little red dots were a running back and two blockers. And what people don't realize, that was AI. That was human AI. You thought that was a human in your head as a gamer. That suspension of disbelief we strive for as a gamer. The fact that we've now come full circle and we can make photorealistic renders, which most people know when they think human AI, as what we call digital humans. But that's scary. That's, Terminator coming down and AI is going to take over the world and destroy humans because, humans don't carry value anymore. That's a different topic we'll talk about later. But so human AI at the core is really, how do we simulate human behavior? How do we, what technology can be used to communicate and simulate human behavior? And like I tell people, I've been doing that since Red Dots of Mattel, and Nintendo's been doing it ever since Mario blessed the screen of every kart fan and Mario World fan out there. So it's really nothing new. We've just done a lot better job at it, and that's kind of the takeaway. I know I'm getting a little on a rampage here tomorrow, but that's really the takeaway I want people to know is all the hype. It's come and gone. Don't get too excited. Don't get too motivated by, oh, humans are going to, AI is going to take over the world. It's really a better tool set. We've built a better mousetrap. So what is that mousetrap going to do for humanity? What is that mousetrap going to do for business? What is that mousetrap going to do for individual lives? We need to harness that and better that, and just really remember that at the core, we've just got a better mousetrap.
And honestly, I feel like even for me, I'll just speak for myself. You can even alleviate some worry when you explain it like that. So when you really take it back and date it back to that far about just video games and even just tying it into that concept, you probably lost some people at the beginning when you said you were pre-cell phone and pre-video game era. But no, to really, you think about these games where the graphics were not up to speed. You think about even the controllers, what we were using, how you could play. I never really met until we were growing up and we had the red, white, and yellow cables that you plugged into the front of your TV.
Oh, yeah.
One joystick that had 30 different games on it, from Pac-Man to racing to Galaga to every little.
And your mind's blown at that point.
You can't get anything better than that. But no, to now hear that it really dates back to that, because even in talking to a lot of the people who I've talked to now, who in some form or fashion have incorporated AI, whether it be from a Chat GPT perspective or Google Bard, anything of the sort, to really hear that it's taken such a prevalence now and a relevance. A lot of people talking about it's everywhere that you see, even so much so to the point where I was just reading I think it was at the Chargers game or at the Rams game, that they just had they were shooting a movie, but they had AI fans disguised not disguised, but in the stadiums at different points.
Oh, yeah.
But to really hear all this now, but not realizing that this was around us when we were in middle school, elementary school, before we were born and everything like that. To me, it still blows my mind like that. So to really, I guess one of the first things that I really want to start with too is just like from a human perspective, to all of a sudden feel like something has challenged the narrative, something has changed the way we think, the way we live. How can someone who's embraced it, someone who's been in it for so long, someone who's seen it transform, even worked with it in a capacity, how can you say that this is something, one, that's here to stay, but two, it's of no worry? It's more because I feel like a lot of times when this first kind of happened, a lot of people were trying to combat it. A lot of people heard the whole job craze and how a lot of AI was going to replace this and do that. But then I talked to some people who were just like, okay, that may be the case, but there's also a lot of jobs that AI can't do. There's also a lot of things that it can only do to a certain capacity. So in a sense, we need to work with it. So from a human engagement perspective, what can we really do to openly embrace AI and everything that comes with it?
I'm glad you bring that up. That's really my biggest soapbox, and I've done a lot of talks. Soapbox. I've done a lot of talks. I guest spoke at 2019 Infocom about this very topic, and I called it "Being Human." You go, oh, well, being human was the topic of a presentation at Infocom. Yeah, absolutely, because you hit on a few key things. One of which is about the crowd. Now, we've been animating gaming crowds and all for so long, but it's really about I'll call it 4 words: human communication, not human replication. We get so caught up on the concept of replicating humans and the robots are going to take over the world. And now I can't tell if tomorrow's a CGI character behind that lens or whether I'm really talking to someone. You've heard for decades the Turing test and all the Turing tests and all the movies that have come out. We call it suspension of disbelief in gaming. Other people call it fuller realism, blah, blah, blah. And at the end of the day, this whole concept of virtual reality, augmented reality, virtual characters, believable characters, to be honest, let's give Disney credit. He was the first virtual realist. He created Disney World, and the whole idea was to put you in a separate reality. That's all we're doing now. Disney just didn't have the tools we have. So when you talk about what does it mean from a human perspective, the concept here is just like anything can be misused. We have a very, very powerful tool. We have a bigger tool. We talk about, I've got a bigger hammer than I had yesterday. So generative AI, Chat GPT is just a bigger hammer. How do we use that hammer? There's going to be tons of ethical questions. It should be. Do you misrepresent somebody? Or do you do what we do like in our healthcare products? We have a product line called iHealth Assist, and we're doing things like trying to greet, we have 2 members of the deaf community on staff, and we try to greet people in their native language. So instead of saying, okay, Tamar, you've got a particular demographic and an audience, do I need to teach a Hispanic speaking 72-year-old elderly lady that needs to get a test done or an MRI scan at a hospital? Do I need to teach her how to use her cell phone and patient check-in and form processing and blah, blah, blah? Or wouldn't it be wonderful if she was greeted with a character that was approachable to her, that was trustworthy, another Hispanic female that spoke Spanish, and say, hey, how do I get to my I'm here to get an MRI scan. Someone told me I need to have a brain scan. And this avatar go, hey, here's how you get there. Here's what you do. Here's the questions I can answer you. And it's not trying to take the jobs away from the receptionist or the healthcare professionals. We all know in the healthcare world, our healthcare system is strapped. The European healthcare system is being brought to its knees with labor shortages. And how do you've got something between your ears, young man, that nobody can recreate in AI. And that's the innovative and creative thinking that a human can excel at. So the ideal about this chat GP and generative is just a catalyst. How do we get something written faster? How do we get answers quicker? How do we get an answer without teaching someone how to use all these IoT technologies, natural language parsing, speech to text, database systems, form processing, all these what they call edge technologies, these buzzwords you hear all the time. And this whole generation thinks they're being lost. We go, no, 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 no. The world we want to create, the human aspect of this is the technology should be invisible to you and me. We've spent millions of years learning how to communicate. You're nodding your head to me. We're smiling. We're making eye contact. We're carrying on a natural conversation. You and I didn't have to go through and say, hey, you know what, Tamar? I'm going to say this, and here's the language. We just naturally engaged. That's what we want to do with technology. So instead of teaching people how to use technology, use all these big hammers, as I call them, the chat GPT hammers and natural language parsing, all those buzzwords I laid out. And why don't we just teach technology to communicate at a human level? We do that, and then we tear down the barriers of all this wonderful technology that can scale and make people's lives better. And we take that burden off of those workers, and then we turn people back into people. We turn them back into humans. They become the innovators, the creativities, as the old Willy Wonka, we become the dreamers of dreams. That's who we are as people, and let's give that back. So it's really an empowerment technology. It's not a replacement technology.
I like that. Teaching technology how to operate and communicate at the human level. I think that's as sound and fundamental as it really should get. But I think when you put it into perspective like that, just about the brain, about how that can't be, just replicated or just, especially it's unique to you. It's just like a fingerprint almost. No two fingers have the same print, but no person has the same fingerprint as another. That's
absolutely
amazing, like just an amazing fact to me. But okay, so now thinking about you specifically and part of your journey, what would you say, if it was really just something that you can even recall, was there something that really piqued or prompted your interest in wanting to really get involved in this space? Was it really the transformation that you were watching? Was it really eye-opening to really see that, wow, this has been really all around us the whole time? They've been replicating it in different ways, emulating it in different ways. What really put Chuck into this space?
I'm a little blessed in that sense, and it's going to be a 2-part answer. One of them I'll probably get a little teary-eyed on. Grew up cattle farmer, literally didn't have hardly anything that would plug into a wall socket until I was a teenager. Never got on an airplane until I was 19. We were a small urban community, and I had this propensity to take things apart and try to figure them out. So the first little toy I got as a kid, I remember this little Mattel. They called it a Big Trex. And I wanted to know how it has. And my mom was so frustrated because I took this toy and I go, that's pretty cool. How's it work? So I started taking it apart. Problem is, I never always got them back together. So I always had this intriguing ability to I just wonder how things work and how to make them, and why is this thing running around? I'm only 9 years old, but this thing's acting like a little animal running around on its own. And this does show my age. So my dad came to me and said, you know what, son, you're, and this is where I get teary-eyed. Said, you're too smart to follow my footsteps. I don't want you to be a farmer. So we were about an hour and a half outside of DC. So he calls up buddies of his. He was a barber and used to cut hair for some of the technology leads around DC, the big 50 military contractors and all, and said, "Hey, Joe, give my son a job. He's too smart to be up here." So I started working in computers literally when I was like 14, 15 years old. And yes, I'll tell your audience, I'm 57. So if you do your own math now, you know how long I've been into technology. And the more I got into technology, I was always intrigued by how it could take this brain of ours and convince your brain. I literally go back to the days of that Mattel 3 dots, and I go to the gamers. I've always been fascinated and infatuated with the escapism and how your brain can be so easily fooled. So I've always played into that. I did military simulations, I did war gaming, got into commercial gaming, did fantasy fighter games, ultimately landed a job at EA Sports doing sports games. And that's what I tell people. I was 1999 when I was teaching 52 players how to run around a field, 11 on each side, but teaching an entire two football teams how to coordinate, how to throw footballs, how to catch footballs, how to gang tackle, how to hit one guy high, one guy low. And that's what I say. That sounds, oh, shoot. That was pretty complex AI back then. And that was 1999, 1998. So it always advanced too. And I got into the commercial side. I got into retail and shopping, had I'll call it a fairly successful consulting type operation. And then about 6 years ago, and here's the second teary-eyed part of my story, my wife was diagnosed with breast cancer. And that's a pretty scary time for anybody. She's wonderful now, but she went through some tough times, and we were going, okay, what's going to happen? What do we do here? And the enormity of a healthcare system and the journey that a patient goes through in that healthcare environment, until you're put in that position, it's always it happens to somebody else. And then you get in there and you realize that, yes, we're absolutely amazing at outcomes protocols, clinical trials, making new medical devices, making new medical treatments, but we didn't always treat the human as the human side of the patient. So my wife had her final radiation treatment, and she swore to me, she says, "Chuck, this has been horrible. I don't want you to, you haven't had your colonoscopy yet. So you go check out. You got to promise me you're going to check for cancer." Dude, what do you think happened? The very next day, I was diagnosed with late stage colon cancer. I'm still going back to MD Anderson. So I'm going through the same patient journey going, oh shit, the website's telling me that I have a 28% chance of survival. And, patients are giving me doctors give me technical information, but nobody's treating the mental side. So then I get clean. God, thank the good man upstairs. And it's been 5 years now. But then I go down for my checkup last year. My wife has her second bout of breast cancer, different blah, blah. So the story here is that I started spending my early career chasing the almighty. Let's be cool gamers. Let's do the fun stuff. Let's make lots of money. And I was able to get, literally millions of kids engaged in my football titles and my EA Sports titles and my fighting titles. And then I went through this as a middle-aged adult, getting up there, going through, and then going, wait a second, what clicked in my head was, is there a better purpose for that communication technology we've created? Can we do something now that not only makes money and have people have fun, but can we do something that's now going to help people that struggle? And until you're in that position and it happens to you, and lightning does strike 3 times, and it was all within 5 years, we've now really shifted this focus and have really come to this table as trying to improve healthcare from a patient perspective and a patient experience perspective. So that's really why I'm on these podcasts now and trying to finish out my story of fun and finance, but ended up with something that's a little more, we call it PRSONAS with a purpose. So it's got a little more purposeful goal to it.
I like that, man. Obviously, I don't like what it took to get there, but definitely, obviously, to hear the journey, to hear both from your side, and then even to hear about your wife, man, I'm definitely just saying and sending nothing but prayers and nothing but
appreciate it.
takes. It's one thing to just have to go through that. It's one thing to have to deal with that, to also have to deal with that with a significant other of yours and have to care just the same. But it's another thing when you allow that to, yes, it definitely got you down and out. It definitely was moments where some days just were terrible. They were hard. They sucked. You didn't even want to feel like you were going through the day itself. But it's another thing to really take all of that, to encompass it all, to even internalize it in some instances,
Mm-hmm.
and be able to then take what you learned, take what you went through, and make sure that nobody else has to go through it the same way you did. I think that shows the selflessness of character. And I think that really does show the type of person that you were, the type of upbringing that you had, and what people really ultimately wanted for you, and really what you have up here. No matter how old you were at the end of the day, that wisdom just continued to accumulate. Because
Nah,
I don't see 57 at all. But nonetheless, to really hear you then, like I said, that transformation into you now look at it with a purpose, and to you also want to be able to provide that in an industry that is it's so challenging these days. And I really see
it is.
challenging really may be an understatement, because I don't even really know what to put on our healthcare industry, but it's a trying time right now for all of us, and especially with really everything. So now, with this purpose specifically, with everything that you're trying to do, especially from the approach of the healthcare perspective, would you say that you've, and you're probably going to say yes to this, so I guess I'll ask it a little bit deeper too. One, would you say that you've ran into like hurdles? Would you say that there have been drawbacks to this? Would you say there have been times where technology may have not been received or may not have been understood the same way? Because, I feel like the same way us as human beings, us as people who are not in this field whatsoever, have our own misconceptions or just our own reservations. I know people in healthcare, I know people in tech, I know people in any industry, real estate, whatever, with construction, they're still going to have their drawbacks or just reservations or questions just the same. So when you were trying to communicate this message, when you were trying to put this out there to everyone, to different industries, what were you kind of met with? Was it any like opposition? Was it any just like people were kind of teeter-tottering on the fence? What really was that interaction like?
Yeah, it's an amazing question you asked for more reasons than you might even think at first. Um, the healthcare industries are very, and I say this with all due respect, because the healthcare frontline workers and healthcare HCPs, as we call them, are overstressed, overworked, and in it for the right reasons. A lot of them are being forced out or chosen to go out because of the undue stress and all on them. So it's a strained environment anyway. But because of the conservative nature of the industry and how everything follows very regimented protocols for obvious reasons, how the testing and how the regulatory side and compliance side of the industry is, my push for this plan, and I say plan because going back to the MD Anderson, when my wife and I were down and I was dealing, one thing that kind of triggered in my head is one of the piece of advice they gave them. The cancer survivors have a couple things in common, and one of them they say is make a plan. Make a plan. Plan on what you're going to do when you survive. So we put this plan in together is to do something, that was a little more betterment. So the point there is this compliance and regulatory restriction and conservative nature. There's been a lot of resistance. Quite honestly, it's been a surprising amount of resistance on my side, on a willingness to adopt a new paradigm, for a willingness to say, okay, I'm going to put this in my hospital. Okay, I'm going to use this for our clinical trials. I mean, we've had a great partner in RTI. RTI does they're a clinical research organization. They've had us on several pieces, but even within that group, we're still not seeing the scaled adoption we see in other commercial sides. And you hate to say it, the negative push on that, and I shouldn't use the word, let's say not as positive push, is that it seems like the companies that are driven by the retail initiative and the engagement issue of entertainment and retail are more likely to roll the dice and take the risk and say, okay, this has such good upside potential, we're going to invest in it some more. We'll try it out. And since, as you know, generative AI and chat GPT is just, blowing up right now, but it wasn't there 3 years ago, or at least not in the same form it was. So we're still waiting for that market to shift from their internalized, here's what our operational workflows are, to, oh, let's try something new. And I think because of my desire to do something for the patients and the individuals in the healthcare system, I've probably failed at identifying the value and the upside to some of these potential partners where they've been willing to take that almost a leap of faith, or at least a desire to move that needle forward and move that, let's call it bar forward. And they go, we're worried about bandages and keeping people on keeping healthcare professionals on payroll and all, and I don't need to try this unproven technology. So we're still an unproven technology. ChatGPT and generative AI has shown great promise, but I think as beautiful as it's been for giving us some additional exposure, I think it's also created some resistance and hesitation, because what you've probably learned, they even use the word, quite honestly, they use the word hallucination. The chat GPT and generative AI is based on the data that you feed it, basically, and it's got to learn from something. If there's a bias in the data, there's a potential bias in the outcome. If there's a hole in the data, there's a potential hole in the outcome. So there's these things that call them hallucinations, which when you talk hallucinations in medical, you really don't want those two words going together. So that's probably the number one thing we've seen. We combat it for a variety of methods that we don't have to get into deep. If someone's interested in that, I'm happy to follow through. But we use a combination of generative AI to speed up the content development for these industries, artificial intelligence, more generalized artificial intelligence for how to interpret, analyze, and deploy that content. But then we throw in what Microsoft calls an active component. And that active component is our patient experience teams and our healthcare professionals are always part of that final vetting and quality assurance process. So it's a little more time consuming. It's a little more quite honestly, a little more effort to get off the ground, but it creates the scalability of the AI with the control of the humans behind it, and that's kind of what we've done. But that's one of the biggest resistance to your question directly that we've kind of seen is that structure around the healthcare and how to get them to change that paradigm a little bit.
And almost like you said too, very very surprising amount, because it's almost like you're trying to get them to let their guard down just a little bit.
Yeah.
Realize that, but the guard that was placed up was unwarranted in a sense, or just because y'all made this model, or it may have worked for what y'all were doing at the time. But the same way, like we said, the chat GPTs and the active and generative AI wasn't really in its, I wouldn't really say it's in its glory days as it is right now. Because something that was kind of new and unbeknownst to me was, like I said, we were always just surrounded by this, but it wasn't until
Yeah.
I really started paying attention to what was happening, from the coding to different things like that I really realized, oh wow, like this is not new. Despite, like, I'm not
Yeah.
believe y'all, but it's like seeing is believing type thing. So to really see different examples to really
Yeah.
all come in front of you is crazy. But I love the point you hit on about now active, and about the fact that, because I feel like, with AI comes about the connotation that everything is just machine based. You just plug in some things and the rest is just done for you, not knowing that you still have to fact check, you have to check behind things. Computers make mistakes just the same. Google makes mistakes. These are very active because they were built by what? Humans, essentially. So
Exactly.
take a deeper dive into the active versus the machine part. When it comes to like the active learning, the active interaction, what is the difference between the machine learning, the machine interaction? How do they really play a part with one? Because I could imagine there are some similarities. They do go hand in hand, but I could imagine there are also two very different concepts. It's the same. So that's more so what I want to hear about too.
Yeah, it's really about we'll call like priming the data set and vetting the data set. So as you know, generative AI is based on a large. Let's not even use ChatGPT. Everybody talks. Let's talk about Google. Google's in the news for potential monopoly breakdown and all blah blah blah. But Google, you go on and do a Google search and you can find out almost anything you want just Googling somebody. Google data is based on this spider of all this data. So, for instance, in trying to find an example that's not political, if you have a certain set of facts about a certain individual, and that's what's talked about the most, even if it's not technically accurate or not as accurate, because it's talked about 80% of the time, and something else, a counterpoint, is only talked about 20%, there's a natural slanting towards the data sets that say, oh, well, we have a higher probability of this data being here. With that active learning set, what it allows us to do is take some initial data set that us and our partner, whether it's a healthcare, a hospital, a data center, whoever it is, and say, okay, we're going to pull from these data sources because these are vetted data sources, JAMA articles, New England Journal of Medicine, or AMA, whatever it is, American Medical Association. And then you start going through that data, and then you want to provide that information to your audience. That information would have to be vetted through the humans that are behind that data, or the humans that are behind the data you want to push out. So you're being you're an ECU pirate. So if someone says, okay, I'm going to pull a data set, hey, tell me the all-time greatest college quarterback of all time. And if you slant your data by priming in your old ECU quarterbacks, then the AI is going to come back and tell you that, ECU, East Carolina, always had the best quarterbacks because that's what you've primed. So instead of doing that, the active learning means we're going to work on that data set. We're going to vet that data set. We're going to prime that data set with the human component that will now vet, screen, and analyze that data, and either feed it more accurate data up front or screen the data on the back end. So that's what we mean by active. It's simple as humans become an active participant and the vetted data.
That's a good. Hey, look, I know some people were just like, "Hey, ECU does have some good all time." Yeah, but I don't know about all time. We may have a better conversation, but no, that's an interesting concept because, like you said, I feel like for all these machines, all these platforms, all this software, whereas we kind of see it and it's promoted to us as just that technology and everything of the sort, supposed to make things easier, confine things, and everything like that. How did it get here? How is it developed? How is it approved upon? How is it, the feedback and everything that's given? It's not doing all these changes and making things happen on its own.
Yep.
It needs to be, like you said, vetted. It needs to be told. It needs to be. But I like how you said that, almost like a manipulation thing, like almost just like if we skew the data or if we put things in a certain way, then yes, it could come off a little unreliable or untrustworthy. But it's not the program. It's not the software. That's the operator behind it. So you make it.
Now, you know where I'm going with this. Now you're getting into those ethical questions.
Right. So you make it.
If you feed it whatever data, you can use the power of generative AI to broadcast the truth all over the world, or broadcast the lies all over the world. Got to be careful. There's a lot of questions. Now, I'm not a expert on compliance and ethics and AI ethics. That's not our forte. We literally go to our clients and say, we want your patient experience team. We want your HCPs involved here. And we involve them because we're not claiming to do that. And we don't want that. I'm not saying we don't want that responsibility, but that's not the value we bring to your team. That's your side. So that does open up a big thing. But really, at the end of the day, we just want people to open up and say, okay, if you had the ability, healthcare association, to say, okay, I've got this many full-time employees, I've got this much work, these guys are overworked. You know what? It's not about taking, if I say I could take 30% of that time off, you're right. That was a number we had back in 2019. All jobs, most jobs, if you take jobs as a whole, only 30% can be automated. And usually they're, assembly line workers, or there's only certain jobs that can be completely automated. So if you take that number and you apply it to even your personal day tomorrow, okay, tomorrow you work 40 hours a week. Knowing you, if you're in the podcast world, you're probably working 50 hours a week plus, whatever it is. And I said, you know what? What would you then do with an extra 15 hours a week? You have a brain up there, as we mentioned. You can bring that high value, creativity, innovation, correspondence, quality of life, whatever you want to do with that 15 hours. Can increase that productivity level. And we talk about like that's new. Back when we had, nobody in the world would dream of using a manual typewriter anymore. I did. When I was kid, my typing class was on a manual typewriter. And now we got a laptop, and nobody questions a laptop, but your laptop doesn't have eyeballs, a nose, and a mouth, so people don't get freaked out about it. But at the end of the day, it's really the same thing. And kind of anecdotally, but kind of funny story I always tell people, and this is Googleable. We talked about Google. Go back to Google. Look up stethoscope, the original creation and invention of the stethoscope. There was a certain, admittedly, subpopulation of the healthcare world that said stethoscopes are the end of modern medicine. It's not as sensitive as the human ear. It's separating us from the patient. It's not a good tool. It's not able to reason on what it hears. It can't make decisions, blah, blah, blah. And there was a subset of the healthcare world that wanted to ban stethoscopes. So, I mean, we're just repeating history here. But at the end of the day, stethoscopes are indispensable even to today. Laptops are indispensable even to today. Mobile phones are indispensable. It's arguable to say PS4s are indispensable for us gamers. Um, so at the end of the day, 5 years down the road, mark my words, go on record, right hand up in the sky, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, the hype of generative AI and chat GPT is going to go over. We're all hyped up. They're going to go, oh shit, it didn't work. They're going to be going through that, what Gardner calls the disillusionment phase. But at the end of the day, it's going to stabilize out and it's going to become commonplace. And then we're going to be at that point in 5 to 10 years where all this is second nature. All this is, well, shoot, how did we live without the ability to do the old, well, you remember the old Star Trek episode? I might show my age a little bit more here, where Scotty pulls up the little mouse and he thought it was he's going, computer, hey, computer. And he's going, what's going on? Why can't I talk to my computer? Because he's so used to that. And this is going to be commonplace for you and I. It's not that new. Whether you want to embrace it or not, it's coming. My advice is to think about how it can better your organization, your personal life, and then just how do we make sure it's not misused.
And that's, that's really, I think, a great point. Funny thing about Star Trek. So growing up, I used to watch wrestling. I love wrestling, and Star Trek always,
Oh yeah,
always came on before or after wrestling. So I found myself time and time again just watching probably more Star Trek episodes than I probably would have liked or would have imagined, just because I was either waiting for wrestling to come on or I was just so amped up that I just continue to play. Or I was really supposed to be asleep. So for my parents, my guardians listening, or I was definitely supposed to be in the bed. I shouldn't have been watching it, but no, I definitely think you make a great point about. I feel like it's just one of those things. It's inevitable at that point. And to really show how inevitable it is, I think people just should rewind to the beginning of your interview when you talked about three dots, being a quarterback, being a running back, and being a lineman or something like that, to really go to show you that this has been around us all the time. But it's maybe you deemed it something like this, or maybe it wasn't in the news to this regard, or maybe we didn't have it as advanced as we do now. But it also too makes me beg the question that things are always changing. I know within your organization, things are changing within the AI space, within the human space in particular, things are changing. So with everything going on, with everything kind of transforming, with an update here, a GPT-3 or 4, I don't even know what number we're on at this point. I don't know what trial we're on, where we're at with things. But how does PRSONAS continue to stay up to date with things? And especially because I feel like you have two sides of the spectrum to play with. I feel like you have the AI side, but I also feel like you have the healthcare side. There are so many different just discoveries, just research. There's research being done for things that are going to come out in the future but it's happening right now. There are vaccines, different trials, everything like that. So how as a company, as a CEO and everything like that, how do you continue to stay up to date with the time? How do you continue to try to put yourself as much ahead of that curve as possible to be prepared for everything that's coming? And I know that's hard because some things we can't predict, some things we can't expect. Like I said, I've talked to some people who were just like, well, I knew AI was going to blow. I knew it was going to do this, but did I, one, think it was going to scale that fast? Absolutely not. Did I, two, think this was going to be happening? No. So with being in the business directly involving two separate parties, but that are always ever changing, how do you continue to keep that wheel turning just the same on your end?
That's a great question, and it's easier to answer than we think. And I know it sounds a little cliche. Surround yourself by smart people, for one. Smart people tell me what I should know, and then I do a lot of research. I'm kind of as you mentioned or heard me talk about. I like to see how things work. So I took apart my big tracks when I was 9 years old. Now I'm taking apart what's out there. But more importantly, is you really look at it and go, well, as much as we claim to be the AI experts and the digital human experts and the gaming experts and all this stuff, we really look at it and go, we're part of an ecosystem. We call it system integrator. It's not like, Boeing doesn't make all their own engines. They might license Rolls-Royce engines. Microsoft, we've been a Microsoft partner for 18 years. We were a Google partner for a long time. We were an IBM partner with some of their AI. We settled on Microsoft for a variety of reasons. We don't have to go there. We use like Meridian, a world-class hardware provider, to provide our kiosk and hardware for us. We use consultative groups to help reach customers. We use a company called MappedIn for some of our mapping solutions. We use Cobalt Fire for some of the queue management stuff. The point is what we do is we're not sitting here with a crew of 5,500 high paid engineers. We're out there going the same thing everybody else is. We're out there going, or not everybody, but everybody in in the enterprise software world. You're not necessarily building everything yourself. You're more of I'll call it a innovation integrator, a system integrator, but at the innovation level. And I've had the passion, pleasure, and opportunity to do a lot of visitations with trade shows, with other big companies, with people smarter than me, as I mentioned, with great consultants like Gardner, with great partners like Science on the marketing side, with the hardware partners and all. And I just go out and find best in class partners, and we become part of this powerful ecosystem. And our expertise is that ability to take all these technologies from everybody I've mentioned there and wrap them into a package that looks and acts and communicates as a human engagement tool, as a customer engagement tool. So it's really about pulling in the best of the best, putting them in a package, and then putting a nice little bow around them and saying here. Now, that doesn't mean we don't have our own technology stack and IP stack of stuff that we've proprietarily put together to pull all these pieces together. But that at the end of the day, it's really about a group effort, a world effort, and the same way we talk about, PlayStation, you have your animators, you have your artists, you have your hardware manufacturers, you have your chip manufacturers, you have your, the people selling them, you have the resell, the packagers, and it takes a lot to put a PS4 on a shelf, and it's not just Sony doing it. So, same thing there.
That's a good point about there's always a lot of moving hands, a lot of moving parts, a lot of interchangeable things. Whereas the company may put their name on it, the company may have that brand or that logo. Like you said, they could be getting a piece from here, a part from there, some from here, some assistance from that way. It's always good to just have different plugs in different places. And honestly, going into that question, I was like, I feel like that was a good question. Like I feel like I may have him not stumped, but I feel like I may I may have challenged him a little bit. And Chuck, you just put that in like such the simplest way. Like, so thank you for that. But of course, it made sense. It was something that's just like it's for me. It's always interesting to hear from different industries, to hear from different aspects, because as for what I do, for what I'm in, I listen to things, I think about things a certain way. But to have people in different spaces, to have people that have been in this space, still in this space, and are still going to continue to be in this space, it's always just interesting just to pick their brain, just to kind of see where they are with it. But it's also too, you made a great point about just being everywhere, but also surrounding yourself. So it makes me kind of to be curious about the demographic of your team when it comes to personas. So are you guys would you say you're headquartered anywhere? Do you guys kind of work out of a set location? Do you have people kind of all over? Because obviously the healthcare is massive, and especially within the United States alone, there's a lot of moving parts with that. So when it comes to your company specifically and what you guys do and who you're servicing and who you're helping, are you kind of confined to any areas? Is this kind of like a worldwide thing? Give us a deeper.
It's pretty interesting you say that, because with the complexity of that ecosystem, whether our partners are directly W-2 employers or contractors, or I'll call it resellers or consultative partners, us as a core company are primarily in North Carolina with a couple of remote operations in Arizona and Florida. So we work a lot remotely, as you probably understand. We're a software company and we're doing virtual experiences. So why can't the work staff be virtual? And we didn't do that because of COVID. We've been partially virtual since probably 2004, 2005. So we've learned to work that way, which actually has its positives and negatives. You don't have that face-to-face time, but it does make everybody stay coordinated and collaborated. When you talk about reseller partners, value partners, ecosystem partners, hardware manufacturers, then the gloves are off. We have partners in the Netherlands with a VMS system, a company called G10 out of Vermeer, Netherlands, that does some of our back-end pieces. We have a group out of London that does some of our basically IS services and consultative services for some of our clientele. We have companies in California that do some of our mapping pieces. We have second North Carolina company that does some additional portable hardware. We have, of course, Microsoft. We were in the innovation lab at Microsoft for a while. Of course, they're based out of Seattle, but we go up there periodically. So from that standpoint, we really are about finding the best in class, and the physical barrier is not the hurdle. It's about finding the right people. We deal with a couple individuals that represent us in the deaf community. One of which the head is he's part of the team down at the University of Tennessee School for the Deaf. I met him up at Gallaudet University in DC, which is a predominant deaf community. So we do make a concerted effort to make all our languages. With Microsoft support, we support literally over 150 languages right now. There's a lot of legwork that goes into getting that, but technically we can deploy 150 languages. We have characters that you define, kind of like the old Nintendo Me. So if your demographic is, and it's relevant in the clinical trial world, especially if you need a Hispanic female, or you need a middle-aged male, or you need what have you, and you're trying to relate to your demographic for the trial work, and for your whoever your perceived audience is. Like in London, they even though they speak English, there's different dialect, there's different slang, and all that goes into that. It is important to have those relationships, but we do really promote and fly our flag, and are very, very, very proud of the patented technology we have behind our sign language, because we've done a few airports. We were in an airport in Saudi Arabia for a while. And now we do a lot of clinical trials. We do work within the deaf community, trying to get some more traction there. But to be able to say, not only can we address the demographics of whether you speak French, English, Spanish, German, French, Portuguese, what have you, but if you're a member of the deaf community, and people don't realize there's 300 different languages within the deaf community. It's not just sign language. It's American Sign Language, British Sign Language, Australian Sign Language. And we promote that, that we're really working hard to try to expand that. And I think that's a community that's dramatically overlooked. And there was an interesting stat that Joshua, our deaf member, mentioned that we put into, because this is Deaf Awareness Month, September is. And they said, if you take all the people in the world that sign as their primary form of communication, they'll be the third largest country in the world. People think it's just, I knew this deaf person once. No, the numbers, the amount of people that actually depend and speak sign language as their primary language is a significant portion of our population. The third largest country in the world.
Would have never known. Wow. Would have never known that. Would have never. That, because that's in my interaction. Yes, I wouldn't say I've met a host, but I haven't met, I've met a few just in my travels, like from North Carolina, Philly, New York, Florida. But to then amass that, to think third largest, I don't think people are really even thinking about, like, put that.
No. Look up. We have 30 million in the U.S.
Right. Wow.
It's crazy, but that's my point about communication. Focus on communication. I don't care what you speak, whether it's verbal or nonverbal language. Don't you want to feel welcomed, represented, communicated to? And that's what I mean by addressing individuals. And that's what our world domination, as I call it, goal for PRSONAS is. We're finding these niches in healthcare within hospital space, because we need to have solutions that resonate and can be deployed. But at the end of the day, what we're building is this technology stack that creates a communication platform, an experience platform that basically can communicate how humans communicate with any of the third-party companies that we're going to get licensed with. That's why I mentioned like Cobalt Fire, Mapped In, and some of these other companies. They're the ones that build the mapping software. We just put this experience on top of them, and then we say, okay, remember the days when, well, you might not remember this, in the bulletin board days when you dial up on your phone on the modem and you get a little text information back then. Everybody was really psyched and motivated because we had computer screens that could do 320 pixels wide, and you got cyan, magenta, and yellow. We had 3 colors. And now we're at, HD resolution, 300 DPI, more colors than the human eye can perceive. And we're at that kind of world. But at the end of the day, we're getting pretty dang close to being able to make technology invisible. That's really what we want.
I like it. I like it a lot. So I know that there are going to be people coming across this episode who are just hearing about this for the first time, or just kind of finding out about what y'all do, have kind of amassed a lot of knowledge from this interview already. And if you haven't, just recycle it back to 0-0 and just let it play again, y'all. You'll learn something. But I'm also very curious to know about the future outlook. Just the same, also very curious to know about, because there are going to be some people who are interested. There are going to be some people who you pique their fancy a little bit. They heard North Carolina, they heard remote, they heard software, AI. Something got to them. Would you say that there's anything that Personas is looking at from a future outlook? Any spaces or any industries, anything that you're looking to get involved in that you guys have been testing out? Obviously, we don't want to spoil anything here, but sometimes I love down to business being people's first
Sure.
announcement for things, or like, teaser for things or whatever. So
Yeah.
anything that, even you and the team are thinking about, anything that y'all may have read or saw that y'all kind of want to explore yourselves and kind of learn a little bit more.
That's a great question. And my biggest challenge in life is all my overworked, frustrated business partners and employees can tell you is I see this 800-pound gorilla that is human communication that can literally be applied anywhere, and I have a hard time dialing it back. But we are really committing to the healthcare space. We've done a few pilots in the clinical trial world. I really believe now that we're addressing patient experience pieces and how to make patients feel more represented and comfortable in the healthcare facilities, and that's going to help some of the frontline workers there. I don't think we're going to stop there. We've had some success in clinical trial, which is direct impact on the outcomes. People don't realize how misrepresented, and I'll say this in all due respect to the healthcare community. Again, it's a tough challenge. There's a big trust factor with certain minority communities within the healthcare system on being in trials, and to try to appeal to and create a empathetic, approachable, trustworthy communications pipe. I mean, let's be blunt. We're doing a trial right now with opioid addicted babies and the outcomes of opioid addiction from mothers on their unborn babies. And a lot of that's in minority communities, Black, Hispanic. A lot of them are young teenage girls. And I'm in this clinical trial facility, and think about it. Do they want to talk to this 57-year-old gray-haired middle-aged man? No, I'll be the first to admit I'm intimidating. What you can't see on camera tomorrow is I'm 6'8" too. I'm a big boy. So that's not very trusting and approachable. So to create the same way you log into, I'm a big kart fan, Mario Kart. I'm Bowser. Of course I'm Bowser, right? Who else would I be? But to be able to create that character and relate to that and to get into that personality. Everybody relates to certain Disney characters or certain gaming characters, but you as a brand, you have an image too. You want to relate to your clientele, whether it's the demographic of a clinical trial or you're in central London and you want to speak a certain language and have a certain physical appearance for your population, or to allow them to select within our clinical trial, we let them select. We really are trying to get that image of what would down to business look like if it was a person. We have non-binary characters, we have female characters, we have male characters, we have old characters. So what would you do? What would be that personality? And it's not just the look; it's what they look like, what they act like, what's upstairs. We talked about the data earlier and the active learning the data. What does that person know about? What is their expertise? As much as everybody goes, well, shoot, we got generative AI and we got Siri. Just ask Siri. No. If I walk into a hospital and I say, hey, Siri, where are the restrooms? She doesn't know. Hey, Siri, how much is parking? I don't know. Hey, Siri, I need to fill my prescription. Where do I fill my prescription? She doesn't know. Look, poor Siri's chiming. She's offended. Now I just offended Siri. She's trying to chime in on me. So that's what I mean by creating a personality that's going to address your customers, whether they're customers swiping credit cards or patients that are in here to improve their health. They're still customers. They still deserve the respect. They still deserve the representation, and they still deserve to be able to have access to all this technology. And why can't the technology bend to us instead of the other way around?
when you were saying that too, it made me think about the back in the days where, and I'm saying back in the days like I'm so old, I'm 27, but back when the paperclip used to be with Microsoft Word.
Yes,
Had
yes, you remember that.
for some
Clippy, Clippy.
That's a Clippy, right? So, and it was certain questions that you would ask, and there was just no answer, or he would just give you or he would give you like the suggested articles, or did you try this, or the FAQs, and it makes me think now too. There's certain customer service lines that I've called so many times, like my bank or airlines, that when I'm on, I don't even I'm customer service. Customer service. You say it 3 times, they'll get you where you need to go. So no, that's very interesting that you kind of say it like that and point it like that. But I love that just because, like I said, I feel like there was just this fear, and even it could have been like media, it could have been propaganda, it could have just because I'm not gonna lie, the way it was being promoted, the way it was being kind of introduced, it was a little fearful, and it was just
Yeah,
like if you don't really know about this or you've never really heard about this, to hear robots, to hear AI, you immediately think, like you said, those Terminators, those Star Treks, those things that are moving, shooting things and moving things, and they shouldn't be doing that, and they don't like humans and all this other stuff. But it's just like it has to be controlled or manipulated in a sense by humans. So
yeah.
I love to hear that a lot. But ultimately, what I'm really gathering today is that, well, not even what I'm really gathering. What I've come to the conclusion of, I love what y'all are doing. Like I said, anybody who can,
Wonderful.
in any capacity, combat the healthcare space, combat what's being put out there, challenge it, I think that that's a step in itself. But to then become prominent, successful with it, and then continue to move that impact, push that, not a needle, but the bar, like you said, I think that that's even more amazing and impressive just the same. So
Thank you.
before we close out, before we tell people where they can find you, where they can check out everything, where they can even begin to implement some things or help out in them in their own way, do you feel like there's anything that we haven't touched on today? Any last words, even that you want to leave for other business owners, entrepreneurs, people who may be slowly but surely tiptoeing into the AI space, people who are in it? Anything that you feel like you want the people to know out there?
No, not really. Not really. I'll just re-stress the fear factor you talk about there. Maybe don't watch too many Hollywood movies and really look about it from a different perspective. Just change your perspective. What could you do if your staff had 20 to 30% of their day back to them? What would you be able to do with that? Not, ooh, I'm trying to replace people. Switch the conversation. Not what are we taking away? What are we giving you? We're giving you hours. We're giving you creativity. We're giving you the gray matter that the good Lord gave us upstairs. We're giving you back that gray matter. We're not taking anything away from you. So just change the way people think about this, and it really becomes a really, really, really cool productivity tool.
I think I couldn't have said it any better myself. That's why I let Chuck do it. So, you know what I'm saying? So, I'm with you 110%. And no, really, like I said, from me to you, just thank you. Thank you for coming on here today and providing and shedding a different light just on the AI space, on what it really means to even be human, in the sense, the active versus the machine learning, that we're not the human communication, not human replication, as you said it. So it's just like, I'm excited to see what's to come, just because 5 years ago, we couldn't imagine this. 10 years ago, 3 years
Yep.
ago, 2 years ago. So who can imagine what next year is going to look like? What 3 years from now are going to look like? 5 years are going to look like? But best believe, Down to Business will be tapped in every part of that journey. So last but certainly not least, can you please just tell us, everybody, from the website to just social media, best places to find you, come across the products, the services, everything.
Mhm.
Give us everything you got on your side.
Sure. No, I appreciate that. Yeah, I'm in the simplest form. Everybody's got websites. So we've got personas.com. It's spelt a little weird. It's PRSONAS, personas.com. If you're in the healthcare space and you want to see how we're applying these digital personalities to healthcare, which is a personal passion of mine right now, that's iHealth Assist. The letter I with health, and ASSIST, iHealth Assist. Otherwise, we're on Facebook, we're on LinkedIn, we're on, I think we have an Instagram account. I'd have to ask my marketing director. If you have a personal outreach, and I'm going to beg and plead, don't just try to use it as a sales tool. I genuinely like engaging on LinkedIn, and I've found some wonderful partners. I found some wonderful consulting resources, but you can find me on LinkedIn, and I do tend to respond to LinkedIn even better than emails and phone calls and such. And I welcome people who said, hey, I can see where we can take this in this space. I can see where we can apply this here. I do like engaging in LinkedIn, and I'm still going to do it. and tell people it's LinkedIn. Ian Chuck dot Rinker or dash Rinker. I know I'm going to get a ton of sales calls for this, but I think it's worth weeding through the propaganda to get those few good contacts that come out of there.
I would be the first to tell you that, yeah, one of the best things that I did was probably making not only a personal LinkedIn, but then a business page for LinkedIn.
Yep.
And man, like you said, it's been a tool. It's been a tool that sometimes I fall asleep with the tab open, or I used to open Twitter or Instagram on the first day. That's how I knew. I think I was just reaching a different professional area of my life when the first app that I was opening next to my email was LinkedIn. Before I'm text, before I'm returning calls, I'm on LinkedIn. Who connected with me? Because those LinkedIn notifications, you never know what's going to subscribe.
Exactly.
Because I got the premium and everything. But no, Chuck, from me to you, from us to Personas, man, thank you so much for everything that you're doing. Thank you for your willingness to come on here, break some things down, clear up any misconceptions, clear up any things that I feel like you said, we're just kind of media propaganda. We're things that were just thrown out there, exaggerated a little bit, exastricized, kind of at the extreme. You kind of really just level things down a little bit. But ultimately, everything that you're doing, like I said, is amazing. It's needed. It's encouraged. It's supported. But I'm also kind of calling out my followers just the same. Look, connect. I know a lot of y'all in the healthcare space, especially in North Carolina, especially. Yeah, come on. I don't need to call out anyone. We know where I'm going with this. From ECU school, from the nursing school to this Brody School of Medicine, everything like that. Let's tap in. Let's make some connections. Let's figure out how we can be ultimately better together. So, Chuck, like I said, thank you. If there's anything that we can do to support, we're here for it. We will be doing it. We will make sure to share all of this with our audience just the same. But to everybody who continuously taps in, shows love with us, makes this happen, gives me the motivation that I need to really keep it going. I love y'all. I thank y'all. This has been another episode of the Down to Business podcast. Here with Tamar Turner.